so just so we can feel a little nice and friendly, before I sit down, I would love to have 3 buddies so we can avoid this thing called awkward silences that happen during interviews, okay? Sound okay? So I need 3 people to just put up their hands, say their name, say where you're from, just say anything interesting about you. Don't make this awkward, guys. 3, let's go. There we go. Alright, say hi.
Hi, my name's Olivia Asienminto. I'm Ghanaian, very proud of that. And I'm building something very phenomenal around how we support and we build talent and also educate the rest around culture and techniques.
Nice, okay, cool. Can we just have that team, guys? Okay, someone else? There we go. Please project right at the back.
Hi everyone, my name is Anthony. I run a footwear brand called Me Anthony. We manufacture our shoes in Lagos, Nigeria, and we sold to every major city in the world.
You look rich. Actually, technically, I ruined that. We're supposed to all say hi, Olivia. So let's say hi, Olivia.
Hi Olivia.
And then we say hi, Anthony.
Hi, Anthony.
There we go. Okay, on the third person.
Hi, Steve Revan, British married to Nigerian.
Actually, hi, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Been working, looking at investing in Africa, been investing pension fund money in Africa for over 25 years. Coincidentally, nothing related to this event, but the largest client I had, or the largest allocation I had, came from Santander's UK bank pension fund.
Amazing. Awesome. Alright guys, so we're gonna jump into this very interesting conversation. My name is Sydney. I'll tell you who I am after these guys have introduced themselves. But I want to kick off the conversation just really quickly with probably starting with you, Anthony. What gives you the right to lead this conversation?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I've been working in the African tech and venture space for 10 years. First trip to the continent was Sudan 10 years ago, I've got a job done there now. But I'm a founder of Venture, which is the consulting organisation. So I used to work for Google in their investment team, helping European investors go into Africa. I summoned several advisory boards to the UK government. I currently chair their Executive Working Group for Africa, so that's part of it here. And Venture 54 broadly, what we do is we build various initiatives that help build bridge between the UK and Africa. So scale coming into UK, investors coming from the UK into Africa. And then on a more kind of side of things, I'm on the co-founder of a Matic network, which is a non-profit community. It's been running for about 5 years. We just do banging mixers every quarter in London with Finesse. So we've got an event tonight at Someone's House at 154. So little plug if you're around, come along and join me.
Alright, I love it. Who's going to speak to Anthony when we're done after this show by hand real quickly? Okay, cool. Wow, awesome. Tony, go ahead. What gives you the right to lead this conversation?
Wow, very simple, TJ. So invited me to come to the event, that's the event, so that's why I'm here. But more seriously, yeah, my name is Tony Tiyou, so another Tony, and engineer by trade. After working for the automotive, I went into renewables energy. So started venturing there from 2009. So worked with various people before setting up my own company around 2017. And we've had a bit of a journey, but in a nutshell, what we do, we raise awareness about renewables energy across the continent, helping companies to step into the market, especially coming from abroad, to step into the market and keep rethinking visibility, leads and deals. And
let's say that again for the people at the back. Visibility,
leads and deals. Because for us, it's very simple. No matter how good the product, the service is, if you know your target audience, but they don't know you, you go nowhere. As simple as that.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that you grow. But for that, I want to help you to make sure that they know you. When they know you can get a deal, you can get a lead. When you get a lead, you can get a deal. Simple as that. And that's my job. And beside that, we're also very involved into carbon market. I launched a carbon marketplace recently just to help projects to get across to global buyers.
Okay,
so
sweet.
That's about it.
So my Africa experience started more than 20 years ago. My historical accidents are related to being a chief investment officer to a couple of the largest pension funds in Finland and one sovereign wealth fund in the Middle East. And last 15 years I've been a serial entrepreneur launching some asset management, couple of asset management companies which I've sold already, and now I'm working on my third one. And so the first investments were obviously on the public sector side, equities mainly, a long time ago. But I have some recent experience also. This summer I was doing a work on emerging social finance, manager space sponsored by Luxembourg.
Okay.
And there the selection committee where I was a member joined after the 9 applicants out of 200 were there.
Nice.
So it gave some nice activity. Most of my nighttime working is done with renewable energy.
Renewable energy as well, okay.
For the last 5 years, solar batteries, fairly large scale, because I think, I believe in one thesis in the entrepreneurial work is that think big or go home.
Okay, all right. Who's gonna reach out to Petri after the session? Show my hand. Here we go. And then who's reaching out to Tony? Show my hand. There we go. I'm very awkward if nobody put up their hand for Tony. But all good. All right, so guys, we're really happy to have you here. My name is Sydney Sam. Obviously, I'm a little bit of a chatterbox. I play in the African creative economy space, so I built I'm the CEO for a company called Workspace that is aggregating the creative space, the creative economy of creative talent in Africa, graphic designers, web developers, etc., and putting them behind a SaaS platform that anyone around the world can just set up a team for, with starting from just about $300, right? So it's removing all the risk of outsourcing, working with agencies, freelancers, etc. And I'm just really big on all the investment stuff that's happening in Africa. So let's get started on this conversation. We're hoping that at the end of this conversation, those who are playing in different spaces, either you're in the investment space, the venture space, the policy space, we want to be able to create value for each of you. So I'll kick off first with Anthony. Can you give us just some context on the state of the space? What's happening all around?
Yes. So again, I always take this largely from the lens of the kind of founder community in the venture capital and tech space. So just kind of caveat anything I say with that lens.
Okay.
This week you've got AdTech in Africa, 2 massive investor conferences happening in London.
Okay.
In Nigeria, you've got the Moonshot conference by TechAbout, the ABAN Investor World Congress happening in Lagos, Friday, Saturday, giant techs in Dubai, huge African presence, right? The ecosystem is booming and thriving right now.
Okay.
Post-COVID, we had a huge influx of capital into the ecosystem, around 21, 22, lots of startups raised lots of capital. Then we had the financial global recession, which really hit the African tech ecosystem very hard.
Okay.
The reason being was when capital dried up, the first place to lose it was emerging markets, the high-risk markets, perceptions of that. And a lot of African tech companies were raising capital from international investors, but treating it very much like Western logic. Let's raise capital, growth at all costs, not thinking about their sustainability or profitability, which is fine when you're in a matured market like the UK or the US, where you can just keep pumping capital in. But in African markets, emerging markets, the scarcity of capital had a huge adverse effect on the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Companies are growing at all costs, and then the money disappeared. But the last kind of couple of years had to kind of reframe how we think about building businesses in Africa, more around sustainability, incremental growth, how to get to profitability. The conversation of AI, if it comes up, I think AI is an enabler to make companies more streamlined, sustainable, and increase runway. It's not about innovation or deep tech right now. But I think the big thing that I've seen in my kind of role, right, I'm not an investor, I'm not a founder, I'm a connector, an operator in the middle, trying to connect the intersection, is anybody new coming into space, awareness is the word I always use. And what I mean by awareness is, you'll be surprised at how many people don't know who else is doing what in the ecosystem. The ecosystem is still very nascent in that sense. And so right now, I think a lot of people think coming into the space, I've got to do something revolutionary, I've got to make some huge, big outcomes. And actually, what we need to consistently do is just be aware of who is in the space, who is doing what, how we connect together. I use the kind of analogy that less than 1% of venture capital globally goes into Africa, which is a very small, disproportionate to the amount of businesses and the size of the economies and the countries there. So when I think about what Afribonds are doing, if when you build spaces like this, and all of us here in this room, we're connecting, it's very good to connect with all the others building in Africa. That becomes almost a little bit of an echo chamber. We all know that you know each other are. So thinking about right now, if we're the 1%, how do we all tap into the next 1% we know that are not yet looking at Africa and ecosystem and just creating awareness for them?
Okay.
And I think that's what the next couple of years is still really about, is looking at people in the space, creating awareness of who's who, who's doing what, and where they can connect into the space. We don't need to see huge outcomes. We want to see huge outcomes. But that's what it's about building communities, so people are just aware of who's who, and they can figure out what they can do. And I think that's what Afribonds do, that's what African Network's trying to do, and I think as we come out of this global recession, we're going to see a lot more capital come into the space. So we need to create the platform for those investors to understand where to navigate and how to make good deals and see successful outcomes, so they'll stay in this new wave of capital, etc.
It's really interesting how you spoke about the impact of not focusing on sustainability and how that has actually just created this rift in the entire space. I wanted to push that also to Tony. If you could also give us a little bit of a lens to actual sustainability businesses as well, renewable energy businesses. I think that you're also learning, in that space. What's the state of the space from your perspective?
Thanks. So we came well. So that's an excellent question. And I would say, yes, I definitely play in the renewable energy space. I've been playing on that for 10 years plus, 14 years, put it that way. So I'm not getting tired anyway. Yeah, I think the space really kicked off, I would say, in the continent after the year 2000s. If you look at the history, it started initially in North Africa, countries like Morocco, Tunisia, and then Egypt, and where they were starting having the various solar projects, wind projects. And so, the history, what happened is after the Arab Spring, that's where actually they sort of stopped the progress, because obviously they need to deal with the challenges. And then South Africa kicked off with the WIP program of the 2014. That was start building. So back in those days, as you can imagine, we just had few projects, few kilowatts here there. So if we look at where we are right now, so definitely the industry has come a long way. So talk about the main technologies, because I know most of the time when we talk about renewables, so there's three key technologies we're talking about. So we have solar, we have wind, but also hydro. But hydro, people don't know that it's actually the oldest, if I may say so, because we always had hydro ever since gas independence, when we built all those dams and all that. So in terms of solar, for example, last time I checked, we built around 13 gigawatts of power across the continent.
Just to confirm, who's driving these initiatives? Is it the governments themselves? Is it investors like?
That's a good point. I'll come into that. I'll come into that. So, 13 gigawatts of power. So, the main country are South Africa, Morocco, and Egypt. That's for the solar bit. You have a little bit of Kenya as well. And for winds, same thing. So, we also had 11 gigawatts of power that we built. And again, the usual suspects, you have South Africa, so Egypt, and a bit of Kenya, and hydro that's always been there. So hydro represents about 18% of the power capacity of Africa. Africa as a whole has about 300 gigawatts. So that's the capacity that we have, the whole power, all combined. So including fossil fuels. That just give you an idea, obviously, where we are. So you were asking a question about who actually funded, basically. So who's behind it? So in terms of renewables energy, and that's probably where we need to do some more work, and that's why it's good to have Santander and I guess some investing in the space. So 81% of the funding comes from DFIs. Yeah, these are the your AFTB, your IFC, the World Bank of this world and so on and so forth. And only barely 10 and 15% those are private investors. And in terms of even public sources from African countries, I don't think it makes 10%. So yes. So basically, DFIs dominate the space. And if you compare that with all the other regions of the world, it's all the way around, right? So because DFI, they're good, but they come with some strings attached that sometimes, and also some little undisclosed agendas that unfortunately are not really helping.
Right.
So that's why it needs to be tackled as well.
Okay.
So that is actually where we find ourselves. So with all what I've said, I would still take that even an industry like solar. Yes, we've gone a long way. We've built 13 gigawatt, but guys, that represents barely 1 or 2% of global capacity. With Africa holding like 60% of the resources, world resources. Let's show you that everything that you hear in the news, we still haven't even scratched the surface of what we really can do in the industry.
Right.
That's what you gotta know.
Right.
So there's a lot of potential. And then we need to do a lot more work. Barely 1 or 2%. That's it compared to global capacity. 60% of the resources. So yeah, that's where we are we find ourselves. That's why I always take a pleasure to come to spaces like that, just to inform people. We need new skills, we need new ideas. The platform that you're building is brilliant.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those, even in terms of the actual players in the market, so the people that dominate the market, they're not local. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of the local companies, so they struggle a lot because they don't know how to put together a sustainable business. That's what like I say. So that's what you're doing. That's something that could be really helpful. But I know that you mentioned to me we're gonna get into the challenges and the opportunities.
Yeah.
So I'll stop there. So just to give you a little bit of a flavor, so where we are. But yeah, this space is growing, but we need all of you.
I appreciate that. Awesome. Petri, how about you? Can you give us more of an investor lens and also just bring in the idea of what impact investing even looks like? What's the space like right now in general?
Well, the space is growing, and one of the challenges, if I may continue on the previous topic, is that why is it so that only DFIs are investing in Africa, and mostly it's the finance world is very much driven by the mathematics.
Okay.
So which we've written some research papers, and there the perception of risk is different. What is the real risk? And it has been already proven, and nowadays there's much more articles about it, that from the credit point of view, actually also African debt.
Africa's debt.
Yes, he's performing well. The numbers are good, and still you have a bunch of investors. When you mention Africa, the immediate short-term answer is no. And then obviously that's giving a huge amount of opportunities. If we go back to the renewable energy point of view, the infrastructure investments were designed in the beginning that people finance to make roads, bridges, very boring, passive stuff, and then the returns tended to be very small. Now the same infrastructure people who are deciding on whether to do solar energy are still looking at the countries, the Western world mainly, and they are targeting some real returns of 3%. You already don't have to go elsewhere than Eastern Europe, where most of our pipeline in the renewable energy is and you get, because the electricity is more or less guaranteed same. And if you get 3 to 5%, it's more already there. You can only imagine that how much more you are getting. If you are getting 5%, it's nominal in the Western world. You are getting 15 in Africa.
Right.
And that should be good for most
people. Yeah, exactly.
And that's just showing that the basics of the financial world theory are wrong, because people are not rational. People are not counting on that.
It's a sense of rational way of thinking, and you're saying that's not happening.
It's not happening, and there are also many kind of financial theoretical proof of, like, the whole concept of behavioral economics is showing that people's minds are twisted, And what's fascinating from my perspective in the impact investing is that how do we change the mindset of investors in the first hand, and then also from the corporate world, that we are getting the time horizon right, so that we don't have the tragedy of the horizon. And the tragedy of the horizon is coming a lot from the bean counters, i.e. the accounting people. You look at the next quarter, next year, and the true investing should look at much longer horizon. And Africa has a huge support on this.
It's really interesting because just from a layperson, from what I'm understanding, the way investment has been approached in general, or probably thinking about Africa, is little linear, right? So we're thinking, okay, you put some money in within a specific period of time, and you're saying it's quite a short horizon, right? So just an example, 5 years, 7 years is
Not even that.
really, and that's what we're measuring success on, right?
Exactly.
And so generally, even people who are willing to put money in, because the measure of success in itself is skewed, the narrative about investing in Africa is also going to be skewed, right?
It is, and what you are missing is this ecosystem thinking. And one of our projects, for example, like I tell you, a case study is in one of the Eastern European countries where it was ignored from quite many investors. You always need to think how you approach it. I mean, we looked at putting solar into a north country, and okay, we started by renting land from the church.
Okay.
They have a few hundred years of community risk management, social and development expertise, and once you have that one up and running, you can add on top of it. It's a bit like steel industry a couple of hundred years ago, where you had steel mills. The whole ecosystem started to grow. People came to work, you needed jobs, and that's how it's starting to mushroom. And there's some nice documented papers now, also case studies about how do you do this kind of a system transformation. And you basically have to look at it. You cannot solve all the problems in one go, but you have to create kind of islands of coherence.
Okay.
You show it at one smaller place, and then attract the local people to do it, and not rely on the old type of equity capital coming from the Western world.
I just want to get,
Yeah, I think what links to Catt as well, and this is particularly kind of the education piece. On the continent, probably on average across most kind of asset classes, about 8% of the capital is coming from international markets into Africa.
Yeah.
It certainly is in the venture space. The big challenge around is on the return dynamics, right?
Okay.
A lot of funds come from the continent, whether they're based on the continent or interested investors in Africa, and they create their models around Western logic around we deploy over this period of time, we expect returns in this time.
Yeah.
And as in the last decade, particularly in the venture space, we've seen that model applied to Africa, when actually, at the point at which the investors are expecting their return, they're not seeing that return from these companies, they're not seeing the exits or the scale or the growth of the companies.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily because they're poor companies, it's just because of the nature of that market, the infrastructure, it doesn't allow for scale as quickly. So what we're seeing right now is a lot of funds across African venture space have deployed all their funding, and because they've been using the Western logic, all the Western investors are expecting that kind of Western return timeline. They're not seeing it, and they're saying, well, this is a poor performing portfolio. So actually, no, that portfolio has not had the time to mature, and we need to remodel it based on what is needed for the continent. And a lot of that just not having the infrastructure to scale and growth capital.
To simplify the conversation, what is the theory of, like, what if you could just from that the Western perspective that you're speaking about, right? Like, what is the theory that that people are operating on? If you could just make that simple for us, and then what do you think it should be?
Sure. So in the VC space, in this kind of area, you'll often say, okay, we raise a $50 million fund from these international investors.
Yeah.
We're going to deploy that money over the course of a 4 or 5 year period.
Okay.
And then within years 5 to about 8, we expect to see returns off of those investments. You've done a secondary sell on that investment, or you've exited within year 5, or it might be slightly later. We deploy over 5 years and we expect to see returns in 8 to 10 years.
Right.
So with that logic, they expect to see the return in that time frame.
Right.
And a lot of funds are not showing those returns in that time frame. And again, it's not necessarily because of a poor portfolio of companies. Those companies just don't mature and scale as quickly. There's not as much follow-on capital to come into the business. So this is where the education piece comes in, and we can't apply these Western models to the local market needs. We have to look at it and contextualize it. But a big part of that is then educating those LPs. So we have people limited partners, they're the ones who invest into the funds. And a big part of that is then saying, actually, the most successful VC funds in Africa are the ones that have actually managed that expectation really well. Saying, we're not going to see it quick, or you're not going to see as high returns.
Okay.
And those LPs have been happy. But then if you're expecting the Western returns, the Western speed, you're going to be upset. So they shouldn't be applied to each other. And that's the challenge we're in right now, is kind of that adaptation to the realities of the market, which we've kind of not learned from in the last kind of 10 years.
It's really interesting because, so from what I'm piecing together as well, number one, there isn't a lot of focus on the ecosystem growth and the support system in general. And on the basis of that, the portfolio of companies that people are investing to in general also cannot grow. It's not even cannot grow like it's a bad thing. It's probably just what it is, right?
It's not a bad thing, you just don't have the tools or resources to grow at the pace you would in the Western market. So the infrastructure is not there, which is what this conversation is all about.
Okay, interesting. Can you, Tony, can you give us your context on some of the challenges? We've talked a little bit about mindset and education. We've talked about just the way people are investing in terms of that. Can you just add a little bit of flavor and color to your perspective? What are the challenges?
I think I certainly want to add, can you hear me?
Yeah.
The back?
Yeah, but it's not fair.
No.
Okay, good, okay.
Are you last? Yeah, sweet.
The green light, okay.
Cool.
Thinking.
Okay, green light renewables, right? Yeah, I can give some perspective there, especially for renewables.
Yeah.
Because renewables is an infrastructure project. And infrastructure project, as far as I know, obviously I'm not a financial person, but I just have a little bit of understanding there. It's come with long-term perspective. But the problem sometimes is people, when they will come into the continent, they will have the short-term perspective. That's why they have all those disappointment that you were talking about. And I really liked what Petri mentioned there when he talked about basically building an ecosystem for that ecosystem. And for me, it's very, 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 very crucial. Because as I say, so when you come and jump into that, if you really want to see your project succeeding, you want to be looking at grand scale of things, first of all. So it means that beyond and before just the returns, you want to look at, okay, do I have the right regulatory framework in place?
Yeah.
That's very important because especially for our industry, regulatory, it's very key, right? Do you have the right policy policy in place for that? Yeah. And then after that, do I have also the right skills in place? So let's imagine, for example, you can even reach financial close for a project, but it turns out, okay, I don't have the skill even to build people, to build this project. That can delay significantly your project, right? And after you've done it, obviously now you want to be able to raise the finance that goes into it. But beyond just the generation aspect, because sometimes when you talk about renewables energy, that's generation aspect. You also have to think about the T&D transmission distribution. I give you an example. The biggest project in Africa for wind, that's the Tiyou Canal. Yeah. So it's a 310 megawatt project. Yeah. And after it was built, would you believe me, it took 3 years for them to connect them to the grid. Yes, it was sitting there.
Did no one think about this before the project began?
Don't ask me. So
wow.
And why was the reason? Simply because the grid was not able to obviously take on 300 megawatts of wind coming, right? Because obviously that's common.
Yeah, it's smart, yeah.
I know, but that's the kind of issue that that's what we were talking about, having this ecosystem approach that you want to deploy. That's very important. And also because when you jump in a project like that, the expectation is not always the same. When you talk about, for example, for investors, because infrastructure, that's long term. So that means you want to make sure that if I invest into this project, I want to make sure that, because those are 10, 20 years project when you start seeing the proper returns, in 10, 20 years, what's going to happen in that country? Is it stable enough? Especially as money coming from outside of the continent.
Yeah.
So investors, they're looking for certainty. Yeah. But now, when you do community, you want to make sure that, okay, that project will serve me, but I also want to make sure that I enjoy it, I can develop myself.
Right.
They were looking for some level of, I would say, ownership. So participation, they want to participate, not just being standing and looking. That's what the community is looking for. They're looking for livelihood and opportunity. That's very much important. And for the business, they want their returns. So you see, they all have some, at times, different expectations.
Yeah.
You want to make sure, how do you bring all of that together? That's why when you sit down and design the project for me, from the get-go, you need to start looking across all those different aspects to make sure that, like I said, you would ask questions like that. So how come nobody thought about bad stuff? Obviously, I don't think it will happen nowadays because that serves as an example. But this is the kind of thing that we want to be looking at.
It's a beautiful lens to think about sustainability because, firstly, like just for me, logically, the opportunity is huge because if the ecosystem itself doesn't really exist as much, most people think about that as a bad thing. But it sounds like if you want to play in the space, play in setting up the ecosystem as well because it gives you advantages later down the line. It gives you a lot of credibility for future investment and things like that. So it's quite a nice way that you guys are putting this together in terms of invest long term, manage your expectations, think about the ecosystem as well, the different pieces of the ecosystem. You are sharing the piece on how to interact with the local community. We're talking about the investors, we're talking about partners, we're talking about policy. There's quite a little bit that actually everyone in this room can actually get a piece of if you are focusing on your thing. That's quite a cool space to think about. More challenges from your perspective. Do you see anything that we haven't covered as well, in the conversation?
I think one of the challenges is the lack of trust, which we see in Africa. You can already see that when you look at what kind of trade laws are happening. There's a lot of agricultural products and raw materials which are traded, but the African countries are not trading them with their neighboring countries.
Interesting.
And that's what we have. One of my business colleagues is currently doing some commodity trades between Nigeria and China, and performing. You can set up the deal, but then the deal details are taking so long time to get them through, and of course then you have the Western-led banking.
Yes.
Which are awful and very stupid, and that's kind of, those are the kind of things. If you look at from the other side of the success stories in Africa, one of them is microfinance.
Yes.
And clearly, when you look at the Western banking practices, you are looking always historical data.
Yes.
So it's focusing on the collateral, but how can you have collateral if you don't have anything other than the business thinking? And that's what the microfinance was able to prove, that you don't need any of this stupid financial historical data. You look at the character of the borrower, and with that, those circumstances are set. That needs to be based on the trust.
Right.
And the same applies to the trading cultures, and because always the chairman of the panel is willing to have some debate. So I think that in Africa there's way too much talking about the venture capital funds. That is not how you start growing the economy. You start from the basic cost of capital structures.
Yes.
You need to get those ones into the order. And in that sense, a Dutch-based entity like ILX is doing enormously good job. And they got their first 1 billion money from which is the right type of a scale to talk anything below 1 billion is around.
Petri, your bias is showing.
And the beauty of the ILX is that they got the money from the Dutch pension.
Yeah.
Who already have a very diversified portfolio. They don't need these modern portfolio theory specialties that you need to be diversified. You should not be over diversified. You need to find opportunities, then you need to find ways how to implement these investments. And obviously they've done something wrong. Because after the first billion they got the second one from the Danish pension. And that's how things get going.
Okay.
And that's real money. Trying to grow up banks in Africa, I've looked at so many different banking stories, and they are waste. You have to find someone.
Okay.
I agree that we said a part there about venture capital getting too much of the spotlight, and I agree and I also disagree at the same time.
Okay.
I agree from a capital standpoint, it's a small margin of the capital in the continent, and actually for the business it serves, if you just look at SMEs, probably one tech startup to 1,000 SME kind of range, so it's a far bigger market we serve. But the one thing that venture capital does well everywhere is very good at telling stories, very good at getting the spotlight and media on it.
Yes.
And that has drawn a lot of attention to the continent.
Right.
It also does expose you in that high-risk category of venture capital that businesses do go wrong as well. But I think there's a piece there around the storytelling of the continent, what's going on there. There's the general misconceptions we see and de-risking those, but also understanding for those investors that are trying to apply Western logic to the continent, and it's about telling those stories. And I think a big piece around building sustainable ecosystem and collective growth, if you're bringing new capital allocators at any level into the continent, they need to be on the ground. They need to be there and connected into the ecosystem. In 2019, when I was at Google, we ran an initiative where we were helping European funds understand the capital markets in Africa, get a venture space. And there wasn't too much appetite, there was a lot of misconception, and they were looking at businesses, deals, opportunities, and assessing them and dismissing them, when we were realizing, you don't understand the local market, you're applying what you've seen in the UK or Europe. Yeah. And as soon as we got them on the ground, this was in Lagos in Nigeria, two things happened. One, firstly, they don't understand the challenges of the local market and building. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because they're like, wow, they did within this kind of context. That's quite important. And now we can sit down and meet the local capital providers, the people who can work alongside, be our eyes and ears on the ground. Yeah. And a big piece there is, venture's going to tell stories, but it's about getting people onto the ground there. So, it's great having everybody here in London. A lot of us are the key champions. But those that are the new allocators coming to space, how do we get them there on the ground? How do we meet the founders at the source, see the infrastructure, challenges and opportunities as well? And until that happens, it's very difficult to get people over the line, but also it helps them unvalidated. Actually, no, this is not for us. We don't want to waste our time talking to those who are not going to allocate, who are just acting lip service as well. So I think there's a huge important piece around the bridge building is expose them on the ground, or if you can't get them on the ground, how do we do that from London? Right. Do we bring the founders here? Do we have clearer conversations? We go deeper in a boardroom and look at everything in detail, and what the mediums to help people understand that space, but telling the stories as well, which is what Venture does, for better or worse, very, very well.
Yeah. I do have a question still for you, and then we'll go to Tony. So for the people in the room, so we've understood a little bit about the state of the space, we've understood the challenges, we've seen some interesting trends that have just caused some issues, but I want to put money in people's pockets here. So could we all outline the opportunities and the sustainability and growth space in the ecosystem? Like, let's just break it down for us, for people who might be thinking, for example, the storytelling piece. I'm just thinking is huge if you don't only focus on VC and you focus on other parts of the ecosystem and figuring out how to make as much noise as a VC would in, let's say, investment in renewable space or creative economy or other kinds of economies. That could be an interesting opportunity that I'm sitting down and go like, hey, let's open a PR company that could, do that. So could you just kind of bring that out for us, having this kind of conversation? What opportunities are there in this space that we should be looking at? Maybe untapped, maybe tapped and not tapped as well enough.
I'll talk through the kind of storytelling point of view that narrative I was on. And actually, the guys, I think from Wimbar here, a phenomenal kind of PR agency, tell amazing stories of companies across the continent. So firstly, go and look at them because some of the content they produce gives you a really good idea of what's happening on the ground and what companies are doing great things. So the simple thing is, I went back to that word around awareness before.
Yes.
It's a really simple thing, and I think for everybody to put money in pockets or to help you build whatever your business is, you could be the conveners and the content creators, right? Right now, this is not a brag, on LinkedIn I've got 20,000 followers. I do a weekly news post on Africa. That's a small amount of people to follow you. I've been doing it for about 5 years. But within the African context, I'm in the top 50 people creating content on LinkedIn. But it shows you how small my following is, and I've already got a voice doing that, right?
Yeah.
So it's very easy if you think about what is your niche, what is your focus, what is your business doing to tell the story of Africa, and think about what is that content I can be producing and produce it consistently. Because you could very quickly create a clear narrative and hit an audience within your network that previously aren't exposed to it. My weekly news post in Africa, the only reason I did it was to educate people in my ecosystem who weren't in Africa, and it's just grown from there. Yeah, the very simple thing you do. The second thing is, don't try to be something for everybody. Think about what your niche is, and maybe you convene, a dinner or a meeting with people in that niche. If you're bringing new into the African markets, whether investors, operators, or founders, it's going to be a new space they don't understand or know. So really hit home what they're familiar with and kind of translate that. So for me, whether you're a founder building, an investor building, think about the stories you could tell, carve a niche and be consistent with it, and convene the people specifically within that area of the ecosystem and grow that, and then plug and play into other people building respective areas. It sounds really simple, but right now that's exactly what the ecosystem needs, and it's worked, because it's worked for me, and I'm seeing a lot of other people doing that, not trying to do too much and carve it out. So from a storytelling perspective, that's what I would do, and I think that's a great way to grow yourself and your business and what you're doing in the ecosystem naturally.
Cool. Tony, your side? Help people put money in their pocket.
Okay, so I don't know whether this is a Tony's thing, but the awareness bit, it worked.
Cool.
And it worked because I've done the exact same thing. We have our media platform, and guess what? Also have 19,000 on LinkedIn. And same thing, basically just educating people about what that's actually how I started, actually. I started putting out a blog out there because I realized that, okay, before I wanted to do some consulting work about renewables energy in Africa, but at the time, I could see people probably didn't understand what the industry was all about. So, okay, let me start putting some articles out there, just educate people what's what I plan on, blah, blah, blah. So done it, obviously, start having a lot of interested people, and then I've decided to develop that as a proper video platform, which is for what we did. So definitely, it does work. So reach out to me on LinkedIn, by the way. But back to
the funnel, like what other things, what other opportunities do you see?
But I'm just going to single out two others that are actually very interesting.
Okay.
And this is at the same time a challenge, as we're talking about challenge, and an opportunity.
Okay.
And then one of the because many investors told me that, listen, Tony, even if we have enough money to fund businesses in Africa, even if we have the right policy in place, what we're missing also is the right pipeline. There's not enough bankable project out there in the continent. Why? Because
documented, would you say?
Documenting, just having people that know how to put the project together. Right? Because you want to meet an investor, talk to him, but do you have the structured project to such that when you meet the investors, he understands what you're talking about. Is it bankable enough? Is it investable enough? I think that's kind of a skill that a lot of people still missing on the ground. So opportunity out there, if there are people with those skills, the right financial skills, the accounting skills, or business development skills. These are opportunities that people will need on the ground, seriously. Because a lot of them, they come from either technical background or finance background, but they don't know all the other bits to put things together. Even what you have there, because that's why we were talking earlier, and I was saying that this could potentially be interesting to help people to develop their project and take it to a bankable stage. So that's getting an opportunity for people. So the second one, which is linked to that, is obviously funding SMEs. because many of the initiatives, we talk about DFI. Now, when we talk about DFI, most of the time, the initiative that they will create, they millions term benefit. A lot of the equities. Sorry?
Explain what
What is it?
Oh, okay. Develop finance institutions. Okay. Yeah, sorry, guys. Sometimes I go into my jargons. Like I say, it's the institution like the World Bank, the IFC, the AFDB. I'm sorry you heard about. Yeah, those are the KW. Those are the DFIs. Right? That's what I'm talking about. And I would say most of the initiative that they put out there. So it's for a certain level of projects, people that need millions and above. But most of the companies in Africa are SMEs. All they need is something like in between, I would say, 10K to something, and then 200K to actually grow. And you have a lot of them, they're not startups anymore, but they need, because if you convert them to local money, obviously a lot of money. So they need this growth capital for them to grow. And there's not enough to do that. Yeah. So that means, I sometimes say people, the diaspora who are here, or that people that could put together a group, that's a huge opportunity. Because this guy, when they go and talk to the bank, they just want to talk to the bank. And also the bank is too expensive for them to lend to them. So they're sometimes stuck. So that's something I've always said, people working here, especially Africans working here, this is an opportunity. Come together, especially people that have a very nice, cozy job in here. Come together, each of you can put 10,000 on the table, 10 of you, that's 100K. You could already, you don't realize, but you could already support a lot of business on the ground that are doing well. So,
just because of time, I'm going to open up the conversation to the audience a little bit. But I've really enjoyed and learned so much from this session in terms of how to think about quite a lot. We'll summarize it when we're done with the question. So we had my buddies. Are my buddies ready, and everyone else? So we want to open the floor for people who have questions or comments that you want to make regarding the conversation.
Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. I may not have caught everything because I didn't hear everything, but I didn't hear much about education and innovation in that space.
Okay.
Whereas the continent is going to be home to 42% of the planet's youth by 2030. So as someone who represents the most innovative educational institution as recognized by Stanford University on the continent, who obviously is creating the pipeline for human resources for the global market, I'd love to hear more about what you think about investing in education.
Could you quickly tell us a little about what you think about education?
What do
Give
you
us
think?
your opinion or view, because it sounds like you've got a great perspective on the field back.
Well, we have been, our headquarters is based in South Africa. We've been offering free tertiary education to the most marginalized since the end of apartheid. And because of the level of success we've had with 35 awards and breaking through the glass ceiling of poverty, it's Africa College Foundation that I work with.
Okay.
So we're now a part of a conglomerate of 120 MNCs and universities and philanthropists creating what you could call Silicon Valley versus Cambridge University. So it's emerging in the heart of Joburg. There's huge exponential opportunities for return on investment and social return. So we've had it for 30 years. So that's where we need to be to make sure that all these things that we're talking about, environment and wildlife and entertainment and media and tech and all of it grows. We've just been given a building by Anglo-American to basically house the MIT of Africa. Right. So why not invest in that so that you have the human resources to pipeline consistently for the next, not just 2030, which as being in human rights law I'm very much in favor of, but for the next 600-700 years, given the potential of this continent. Right. More than happy to share more. We have an event here on 6th of November. You're all welcome to come to at the Anglo headquarters. But we really feel passionate that it's important to give agency to the African youth who will be the young professionals immediately. We don't even have to wait for 2030.
I think that's an invitation to for more investment in the education space, actually. So you're adding on to the conversation very well. And guys, do you want to comment on that in any way, or should we just keep pushing forward? Okay. Yeah.
I think education is always the key driver of making economies to grow, and the issue there is that the governments are already highly indebted in Africa.
Sorry, the government?
Don't have possibilities to borrow more. They are already with too high debt. And one of the recent hobbies what I have had is to look at the outcome-based financing, i.e. social impact bonds. And because you need a payer which is coming out from the African government. And once you find an eye to design and structure that one, then you can have a go. There are also some case studies on how you can make and find payers. There's, for example, one Palladium case study in Central America, where once people are being educated and you have employers who have possibilities to hire these people, and they pay a fee. And then you have a private sector which is paying for this education.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Our
Go ahead.
ecosystem has nothing to do with the government. We very much are a private transfer. We're a cross sector between the private sector and the third sector.
Right.
And we have 24 businesses that we own because we're 80% sustainable. We've been doing what you're talking about, exactly what you're saying. We work with the private sector. We offer demand-driven education,
Right.
which is why for 20 years we've had an employment rate of 94.7% in a country that has 67% unemployment rate.
Right.
So we've been doing these things and we're there and we're in Africa. I love South America, Central America, I have worked and lived there, but Africa is where it's at. So why not get into that?
That's why I'm saying this is an invitation, and the point is to build bridges. So guys, if there's anyone who wants to keep chatting about the education space, please go speak to her, and I think that conversation will continue. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, please go for it. Let me just come over there. One second. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sonia Kindu. There was a comment Anthony mentioned, and it was about storytelling on the venture side, right? I think what Africa, and I've covered Africa for 20 years now, and we've seen the cycle. And Africa just doesn't tell the story as Africa should. We don't highlight the successes enough. The media helps highlight the failures. The need for us to almost shout and scream that common sense says that resources are here. We need to be paying attention. The global markets is not looking at me. They're picking up on it, but they're not mobilizing capital. So if that's the case, even within Africa, Kenyans should be comfortable investing in Nigeria. Very comfortable. South Africans are doing a good job, but they could do better, investing in Zimbabwe. Everybody's staying away. Unless we mobilize money, the pension fund assets we have locally. And it would be good to know on your side whether you're seeing that mobilization into venture capital, supporting SMEs. The DFIs can't do themselves. They're trying, they can't. And so they have their criteria and their interests. But if we can mobilize all that money and effectively invest in the higher risk assets, we would see more growth than we're seeing now. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Just to add to that, if there's anyone who's looking for some of the ecosystems that are actually playing in this space, I think Borderless is an organization that is helping with these kinds of investments. I believe there are a few other organizations. If anybody has some of those names, please do share, of Africans or diaspora investing in Africa and vehicles to be able to push that forward. So that's like a really, really amazing piece. Anyone else on comments or any?
Yeah, I just want to say 100% right. When USA Infrastructure Development pulled out of Africa, when it was kind of gutted by Musk and Trump, in a year there's this whole thing about, fair weather to global capital, but the reality is still 80% of capital in the markets comes from international markets because of the lack of local participation, because it's the risk perception. South Africa's done some really great examples of it. To have a look at is the SME Fund, which would basically mobilise a lot of government capital, private market capital, pension funds and others to do fund-of-fund activities. So these bridge builders who've got great credibility and background in mobilising deployed capital, acting as a kind of a go-between. Viable Capital is another great example of that from a fund-of-fund perspective. But the need is to have very experienced fund managers and asset managers that have arguably been there and done it in other markets and have come back and have got a proven track record. Even if it's not in a local market, they prove themselves on other footing. And you'll see a lot of growth funds in Africa. Often it isn't because of a track record in Africa, it's their managers have had success in other asset classes, so they're the next best thing. And hopefully that's going to be a generational thing that we'll see more of that change. But completely agree, it's got to be private, local markets that make it sustainable. The question is, what are the vehicles that are going to allow them to deploy the capital? And again, the example I take at the SME Fund of Viable Capital South Africa are a great example of that to have a look at. And then Borderless, which is run by Joe Kinvey and Hoke, at the earlier stage, bringing capital back into the local ecosystem from an individual perspective as well. So there are some good case studies of it, but it's, how do we mobilise more local capital? But it's a very difficult thing because the pension funds and others, they can make their returns elsewhere, so they're like, why would we? So we've got to convince them or show them that there are vehicles that can help them de-risk out. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's a really interesting conversation. I feel like there's been lots of contemplation on venture capitalists, and I think maybe 5 or so years ago, being back in Ghana and looking for seed funding, they started there was a lot more conversation around blended finance. And I know the conversation has been heavily on VCs, but I don't think, from a personal perspective, that Africa needs to maybe embrace venture capitalists because of all the issues that you all mentioned. What are your thoughts in terms of actual blended finance, or maybe looking at family offices who might be more interested on the impact side of things, as we know, because our infrastructure is not fully developed as yet, but there's so much opportunities on the continent. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll stop talking because I talk about VC a lot.
I'm happy to back you up, Anthony, on that. I definitely agree with you, because one of the things that I mentioned is looking at where the sector is. So the fact that we have a lot of projects that can't get financed for the various reasons that we mentioned. We need to talk about innovation also in the financial world. So looking at the various instruments that are out there and see how can we do better. And blended finance is one aspect of it where you bring together, so obviously private capital, public, but also philanthropy come together, and because now all of a sudden you can mix and match it and have different set of requirements. And this is something that's actually growing, I would say, definitely, because people could see that could be a way forward as well.
And just to we look, just in case you say it's growing, where should we look?
Yeah, I just want to give you an example of a huge program that's happening at the moment, which is definitely, like I say, a result of this blended finance approach. You may have heard about the project called Mission 300. This is not a Tom Cruise movie, by the way. So that's a project that has been launched by the African Development Bank together with the Rockefeller Foundation, and I think there is a. There are actually a few partners there, so definitely. And the idea is to build 300 megawatts of power by 2030 in the next 5 years. That's how they blended finance. Yes, because obviously Rockefeller funded this philanthropy, so you have DFIs, this is DFI, and you have also private. And what they want to do this time around is to really come together and complement one another to obviously build something that's much more practical and sustainable to Africa. Now, are they really going to be able to build 300 megawatts by within the next 5 years? I mean, I have my view on that, but even if they were able to do a third of it, that's significant. Yeah. So, and you can only tackle projects like that to that scale in Africa if you have that blended finance approach.
That's what I'm saying. You can't just purely just
Petri?
It looks like Petri want to say one.
Yes, many words. I think blended finance is the trick which is working for the moment. I mentioned this ILX fund, 1 billion mobilized into emerging markets, not only in Africa, and that was kickstarted by having MacArthur Foundation making a 25 million component into one loan arrangement. They took the first loss piece, so out of 1 billion, somebody kind of guaranteed 25 million if there's a fuck up.
Yeah.
And when you look at the numbers, you can say that, okay, that's rather meaningless amount. But it's the perception of the risk that worked in that case. And as long as these blended finance structures are mobilizing significant amount of money, in the longer run, they are not needed. If your projects are good, those ones will not be. But that's most likely a transition period where we need, but that's also good from the NGOs. The grant providers' point of view, because so far they've been giving grants, and that money has disappeared. And if they can refocus with that money, that okay, let's do guarantees, let's take the first loss piece or something, then they get most of their money back. So it's like a corporation which is focusing on that you need to make your working capital to make circles so that it stays, it doesn't disappear, because then you have to beg for more money to be able to give grants. So it's a and that's something which already proven that it works.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Thanks so much. Take one more question and then one comment. So, yeah, question.
Can you hear me?
I'm not sure. Can you just project?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. There's a couple of things I just wanted to say, and also maybe potentially ask a question. So, just say about myself. I've been in the banking and financing.
We don't know you.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Right. Yes. Yeah, can you hear me now? Okay. So, my name is Dean, and I come from a banking and financing world. So, Anthony, there's a lot of stuff he said that I resonate with and I recognize it, but there's also something Tony also said as well that I just wanted to learn in on. I don't know if anyone else noticed there's a massive shift in banking and how they actually work with people. They are laying off a lot of people, and the reason for it is not because they hate us, and I'm one of them. It's because they've got AI, they've got quantum computing, who are doing it work faster. There were also offshore ones as well, to India, Poland, and everything else. And I genuinely, truly believe in myself that I think Africa is going to be the next destination. It's going to be for manufacturing, going to be for banking as well. Which goes back to the same what you just said about SMEs. Now, Tony, you mentioned something about a project that started and when they got to in my head, I was talking for implementation. They literally fell flat on its own. So I come from a governance perspective, to a lot more PMO work, a lot of project management. So you start from business case right through to implementation. And in any project, which is probably where Africa is lacking now in terms of getting the right SMEs in, they're lacking that complete end-to-end view of what happens when you do build it. How are you going to roll it out? Who's going to hand over? What's it? I accept those criteria, that sort of thing. So I have literally a couple of years ago just launched a consulting company. It's on LinkedIn, which I'll share. But I'm also working with some ex-colleagues of mine as well, some from EY, some from HSBC, and they're working with GCCs in the Middle East, and they're in Africa at the moment to work on, going back to what you said, regulation. But they're also using IA collaborators as well, so they're using partners in IA, and that's where I come in, because I'm able to give them the entry to some African countries that they wouldn't necessarily have access to. So I'm glad I came to this. This is the first one of these things I've ever been to, because I've always looked at Africa as maybe out there as a diaspora myself. I was always educated and worked here, but I'm also doing it for myself, for my children as well, and for our kids. So It's got to be the next frontier. We just got to make sure we latch onto that advantage that we have the access to those markets a lot easier than anyone else, and work with the likes of you.
Right. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. And we have our last question.
Yeah. Hi everyone, hi, my name is Noi, and I'm the person who directed to Tony. I work in the Workspace. I have a recruitment platform where we help businesses in Africa match talent in the energy sector. So that's why my question is directed to you. So what you were speaking about renewable energy, with all the energy transition that is going, what I see, and based on what you also said, is that we are missing some skill sets to be able to carry this momentum on. Actually, what you said also was growing the capacity, growing the ecosystem. So my question to you is, based on what you see and where the ecosystem is right now, what skills should we be telling people to start to get, especially folks at that very young stage, so starting in 5 years, in 6 years, in 7 years, this is the skill to start cultivating, and we want to know that.
That's a brilliant question. That's a brilliant question. So, I'll say, I've always said that to people because that's what I'm applying to myself, right? Let's say, when you were all young, especially coming from African backgrounds, so all our parents will always say, there's only few types of job you're going to go to. You got to be an engineer, you got to be a doctor, a lawyer, and so on and so forth. Right? So that's why we do. And obviously, as you grow, you figure out, okay, it's a lot more broader than that. So what I usually say to people is, for all parents or parents to be, is you want to look at what are the trends for the next 10 years. Look at what are the trends for the next 10 years. And once you figure that out, okay, what would be the skill that will be required, obviously, to serve those industries? And obviously, and then position yourself there. And as we talk today, we know for sure, right? So if you do anything on AI these days, you gotta be on the right path for that, definitely.
But I think industry specific.
Yeah,
so not just broad AI for what it is, but what I'm understanding is industry specific, like AI skills.
But this is the thing, AI is shaping everything.
Yeah.
That's what I'm telling you. For example, for all the skills that you're going to bring. So for example, if I am, for example, a solar engineer, so how can I obviously embed AI in what I'm doing? For example, if I'm just a solar designer, well, guess what? There's lots of platform out there that doing what you were doing. Yeah. So it's either, like I say, AI won't take on your job, but somebody using AI will, definitely. Yeah. Means that everything you're doing, see how you can actually bring down that's very important. You want to focus into that. Now, in the industry that I'm into, so storage is another key question that we're talking about.
Storage.
Yeah, energy storage. Right. Because if you talk about solar and wind, we all know that it's intermittent. So how do we obviously keep the solar power, the wind power, but use it when we want? That means all the battery storage, so everything. If you obviously very skilled on that, definitely you're also going to be very interesting for people. And linked to that, financial modeling for storage, what we call BESS, battery energy storage system. If you have financial skills on that specifically, I told you one thing. I ran a webinar few weeks ago. We're talking about that particular problem, and that webinar has brought to me so many leads because there's people out there, many people out there. Because obviously I was working with a company that designed a financial model that was showing people how to obviously model it, and because there are not a lot of people with those skills, I had obviously hit all the way even from India, because BESS is a big question now in India over there. That shows that if you hit the right thing, obviously it goes all the way. So and then after that you would have hydrogen. That's another key question that people ask themselves. There's not a lot of people that understand this question, how to design it, how to finance it, how to build it, how to integrate that, all those kind of questions. So if you position yourself out, that's what I'm saying, you just look at what's going to come in this world in the next 10 to 20 years, what are the skills that are linked to that, align yourself. You can even be a lawyer, but a lawyer who knows how to actually write a contract on hydrogen. Guess what? You'll be in demand. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes you don't want to look very, very far. But I can't finish this question talking about a little really key. Sorry, can you still hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I get, silence. So I mean, as an entrepreneur, I just want to leave you with 3 key skills for me. So important. I'll just say that to people. I think, and we should teach that to all the kids for me. The first kid I would say, learn how to sell.
Okay.
Very important. Any business child, learn how to sell. Because if you learn how to sell, you will never be out of job. Everybody needs somebody who can sell. And a good salesperson. And I say that coming from an engineering background because I'm talking to you about an engineer. First. So you need to learn it. The second thing, you need to learn how to negotiate. Because in life, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. That's very important. And so I'm sure Chief is smiling because I told him that. So you always need to learn how to negotiate. That's very important. And the third one, learn how to speak in public. Because that's the best form of marketing. That's what I'm telling you. So if you can do that, definitely that's great. Do those three things, whatever the job and topic you do, those work, that'd be great. Last bit for you, I'm running a webinar next week on recruitment because I'm working for a company that's a very, very interesting way to do recruitment. So you want to sign up to that.
Okay.
So
Awesome. That is awesome. So guys, we're just going to round it off. So I have learned so much from this, especially somebody coming from the creative economy. One, I'm really understanding the ecosystem at large and how big it is. Firstly, like this whole idea of sustainability, investment and growth in Africa is a huge space. There's a relevance for the conveners like Afribond. We're hoping we can have more conveners regarding that. There's people on the investment side, right? Like Petri, there's people telling the stories, there's people helping the project so that there's a pipeline of places to put that money, there's people who are consulting in terms of the implementation of certain things when they're deployed, there's a risk. There's so much happening in this space, and I honestly, I'm just blown away by it. Personally, I'm actually probably going to even consider career pivots based on some of the things that I've listened to today. But can I just get a one-piece sentence if people should just take away one thing to remember from listening to this conversation, or just from your perspective, what would that be? Let me start with Anthony, then we'll do Petri, then we'll do Anthony.
Maybe it's one thing to say is, and this is more just around these convenings that are happening, which are really important. Is a lot of conversations happen in the room, and a lot of things don't happen once people leave the room, which go from room to room. You're all here today clearly because you're either trying to build something or you want to support or enable others to do something and learn in between. TJ and the team have convened you here today to kind of build those networks. So go and speak to their team today, tell them a bit about what you're doing, what some of the asks you have from them, but what some of the gifts you can have, because then they will super connect you and that will turn conversation today into action. And believe me, not many people do that, so make sure if you take one thing away today is go speak to their team to make sure you've got that follow-up action or piece of support.
Alright, awesome, thanks so much.
I'm coming back to the sentence which I already said once, that Africa is so loaded with opportunities that think big or go home.
1 billion or more, right? That's your number. Okay, cool. Tony, do you want to round it up first?
Well, I'm just going to say to everybody, so you've learned a lot of things so far, I'm hoping, and you're still going to learn this many things else that's happening after ourselves.
Okay.
But knowledge, it's not power until you apply it. So my question is to you is, what are you going to do?
Good. All right. Amazing. So before we end off, I'm just going to actually give an opportunity for networking right now. How many people are interested in speaking to or playing in the investment space? Let's show my hand. Okay. Because I want people to see you so they know who to come to. How many people are playing in the ecosystem, building, education, consulting, that space? Yeah. Okay. Guys, please look around. Okay. What spaces have I missed? Who else is playing? Who's playing in the venture space? Ventures in this space, okay? I feel like I've missed quite a few other people. What other spaces? Can you help me out? Yeah?
Energy.
Pardon? Energy space? Show my hand. Okay? Okay, so you know who you want to talk to when you're done. But guys, you've been really amazing. Guys, thanks so much for